Hey, this is Yang Nguyen, and you're listening to the Emmy Wealth Builder podcast, where we celebrate incredible immigrant success stories, share proven strategies, and give you actionable steps to build your wealth, freedom, and a lasting legacy. Let's go get it. If you think building wealth means you have to do every single thing by yourself, this episode is gonna blow a whole new world open for you. Abbas go from building a company to $450,000 per month business. It didn't take years of struggle, but it did take grit. So Abbas, welcome. Introduce to the audience a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Thank you so much, and appreciate you having me on. My name's Abbas. I'm the owner of a company called Remote Leverage. And essentially what we do is we help US businesses hire Latin American virtual assistants. So instead of hiring locally in the US, we help them hire from Mexico, Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, so on and so forth. We started about a year and a half ago, and it took us about 9 months or so to get to about 50,000 per month in revenue. And then from January up until now, which is about 7-8 months, we went from 50,000 a month to 450,000 per month in revenue. We've been able to grow very fast because of a lot of different reasons, but a lot of it has to do with utilizing remote talent and being able to build a much larger team than if we were to build locally. We've been just focused on growing the company, and our goal is to hit 1 million per month sometime next year.
Amazing. Tell us more about your background and how did you come to start this company in the first place?
Yeah, 100%. So I got into business when I was 18 years old. I started off as a real estate agent in San Jose, California. And when I had no background in business, I had no background in real estate whatsoever. What I did is, I would sit down on the phone every single day and cold call random homeowners for 8-9 hours a day, asking them if they want to sell their homes. The first year I made no money. I was just cold calling 8 hours a day, made no money from it at all. And I had a second job at the time. And then after that, I went from zero to making 350,000 that year because all the cold calls I was making in the first year started paying me in the second year, right? So I just had a big jump in income at that time when I was 19 years old. By the time I hit 20, I was like, okay, there has to be more to life than just cold calling 8 or 9 hours a day there. Because I see all these other business owners, the bigger business owners, they were making way more money than me and they were working less hours. And so at the time when I was 19, 20, I was like, this doesn't make sense because I can't work more hours. I'm working 15, 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. I didn't see my family at all anymore. And I was like, there has to be something different that I could do to grow the business. And so at the time, one of my friends was like, well, why don't you just hire a virtual assistant to do all these cold calls? And I was like, what is a virtual assistant? I had no idea. I had no idea what a virtual assistant is. And so he explained it's like, you can hire people from the Philippines and you can pay them $5, $6 per hour. And then they can do basic type of tasks, so then they can focus on other things. This was before COVID. So hiring remotely still wasn't as popular as it is today. So I went out, hired my first virtual assistant, trained her on how to call exactly the way I was. And then what I found out a month later is that she was producing as many leads as I was when I was cold calling. So I was like, that's interesting because now she's working 8 hours a day. I'm working, 8 hours on the phone. So now we're doubling the leads. So then I went and I hired a second VA, and the second VA did the same exact thing. And then a third, and then a fourth. And then when COVID hit, I was like, okay, everybody else is laying staff off. I'm going to go all in on remote virtual assistants from the Philippines at the time. And I just kept doing that. Within a year, I had 12 virtual assistants. My income doubled even during COVID, actually. I went from 350 to 750,000 in income that year. I was a solo agent with 12 VAs. And then the year after that, by the time I was 22, I went from 12 virtual assistants to 25 virtual assistants, all from the Philippines. And my income went up to about 1.7, 1.8 million as a real estate agent. And I became top 50 in the country with Remax. So that was, that's how I grew my first business. I made a good amount of money. Then I started phasing myself out of real estate brokerage and started investing in real estate for about 2 years or so. But then interest rates kind of went up and I stopped doing that. And so then I started Remote Leverage because I noticed that my biggest skill set wasn't selling real estate. It was learning how to build teams and hire remotely. But then I decided when I started Remote Leverage that we weren't going to just do the Philippines. We still do the Philippines, but the problem in the Philippines is that a lot of times they're entry-level type of applicants, right? They're focused on entry-level type of work versus in Latin America, you can hire people for much higher roles and they come with a lot more experience. And so then we focus Remote Leverage on Latin America, and that's been a great success ever since.
Wow, I have so many follow-up questions.
So I went on a long rant.
Oh my goodness. No, that is great. I love that you share that. I love that you share your journey of going through what it looks like to constantly hustle. And obviously it paid off, right? But I think what you just shared there would resonate with a lot of the audience who probably in that cycle too, because at some point, everyone has the same 24 hours a day, and you're going to be stuck where you're at unless you know how to leverage that time. That return on time always become kind of that biggest thing that people don't get to think about until they like, now I have the money, I have the skill set, but time is always the limiting factor. Congrats on the amazing growth. That is tremendous.
Thank you.
One of the biggest things is the management piece. Because at some point, me personally, it feels like I go from full time kind of working by myself to not being a full time manager. Still working the same hours, maybe getting more things done, but like that full time management is challenging. And that's picking up personal experience. Help me understand a bit about how you overcome that.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, now at Remote Leverage, I have 54, 55. We use the term VAs just because that's widely understood, but team members, right? And I can tell you it's way easier at 54, 55 people than it was at 12 or 24, 25 people. And the reason is over time, you start to realize that in order to manage a larger team, number one is you need to have SOPs where essentially they all know how you're supposed to respond to certain situations. Like a sales call is supposed to have these type of answers and questions and format, whatever. Customer service calls, onboarding, right? So everything becomes templated. And then what you do is if you've got like 12, a lot of times you're not going to have managers. You might have just one manager underneath you, but then you train the manager to be an expert on how you would respond in those sort of situations, right? And whatever it is they're managing. And then as you get to 25, you might have multiple managers. Like right now, we have a manager for sales, we have a manager managing marketing, we have somebody managing recruiting, somebody managing hiring, somebody managing the IT department. So all of these people, basically, I'm not managing 50 people, I'm managing 4 or 5 people essentially, because then they go out and they manage their own team. So it actually becomes a lot easier. And then by that point, you've already built out a lot of SOPs, a lot of processes. So when people have questions, they don't come to you, they follow the SOPs. And if there's something that's outside of that, then they ask their manager. And then, you give the manager enough authority to kind of make decisions, unless it's a very difficult thing that they need to consult you with. And so it actually becomes easier the more you grow the team, not harder, in my experience. Especially if we hire smart people. And that's one of the reasons why I decided to hire higher level type of workers, So like if I was to hire from the Philippines, it's like $4, $5, $6 per hour. Great people, but a lot of times they get hired for entry level work. And so they don't have a lot of experience with higher level type of work. And so you end up having to train them a lot and spend a lot of time on coaching and all of that. Versus you hire from Latin America, a lot of times they've worked at much larger companies than ours. They've worked at AT&T, Verizon, all these large companies. And so when they come in, they're already very, very experienced. And so they have way less questions, way less mistakes because they come in with a lot more background in business and doing whatever task it is you're telling them to do.
It's interesting that bigger teams actually easy to manage because now you actually have the infrastructure to have multiple manager in place. I also heard what you share about really giving the manager the ability and empower them to actually make a lot of decisions themselves so that you can remove yourself from the picture. A follow-up question that I have, and I'm not sure if you ran into this as you're growing your team, is that I think a lot of business owners run into a situation where they may be good at one thing or a few things that they do. And as part of growing company or having a larger team is that there are a lot of other things that the business owners themselves will not know how to do. So curious, how do you approach people who may come in like, hey, I need to grow, but I don't even know what I need to do to grow? Tell us how you approach something like that.
Yeah, 100%. And that's very common. So firstly, for me, I'm at a point where it's like, it costs too much time and money for me to continue learning new skills in the business. So a lot of times, if I need something done, instead of asking, okay, how do I do this? Where do I go learn this skill? I just ask, who can do this for me, right? And so we start recruiting. So the way we solve problems now is by recruiting people, not me learning a new skill, because otherwise there would be way too many skills I need to learn. And then eventually I'm not going to continue doing that task anywhere. I'll have to hire someone to do it regardless. So instead of learning it and then hiring someone, I'd rather just hire someone who already knows how to do it. And then they can teach the team how to do it in the future. That's how we solve that problem internally. When it comes to our clients, a lot of times they come to us, especially if they're kind of newer, like between 1 to 10 employees for the most part. A lot of times they don't know what truly is the bottleneck in their business. So like they might come to us and say, hey, you know what? I'm looking to hire admins or salespeople or customer support. And then we do a consultation with them to try to figure out what truly is the bottleneck. And then we figure out, actually, you don't need a sales rep because you're really good at sales. The problem is you're only spending 2 hours a day on sales because you're bogged down with 8 hours of admin work and fulfillment. So let's get you an admin. Then you can spend a lot more time on sales. And in the next role, we can help you with the sales, right? So that way you can buy your time back. But we try to figure out what are they spending their time on and what's low dollars per hour in terms of income, right? What produces the least amount of money? Let's outsource those tasks first. And then we kind of build our way up. Like, for example, with remote leverage, when I first started, I did all the jobs. I was the recruiter. I was the hiring manager. I was the sales rep. I was the marketer. But to me, it's like the first task I got myself out of was recruiting and hiring because that was the lowest dollar per hour. I could easily hire someone to do that. Then I got myself out of recruiting for remote leverage, and I got myself out of sales management. And then eventually I got myself out of marketing. And that's when kind of the business blew up, was when I got myself out of marketing as well. And so you just look at your calendar and figure out what is the lowest revenue per dollar and then get yourself out of those tasks. And then just keep doing that over and over and over again until your calendar basically is empty. When your calendar is empty, then you can focus your time on growing the business rather than being in the business. And that's where you really start to kind of build products and grow the business much better than you did otherwise.
Interesting. So tell us more about what you focus on now. Now that you're starting to empty your calendar, what are those highest return of your time that you personally focus on?
One is training our managers to be even better in what they're doing and things of that sort, and coaching them to train their people better. Sometimes I just kind of sit in on meetings and try to see what improvements we can make and things of that nature. But a lot of it too is reviewing our client calls and trying to figure out, okay, what is the next product we could sell, or what could we improve in order to add more value so that we can generate more revenue from our current clients, things like that. So a lot of it has to do with increasing our value per customer. And so, I'm just building more products and creating bundles and upsells and things of that nature, because anything besides that right now is a waste of my time.
Love it. Love the clarity on what is the biggest return on your time. Tell us more about your company. What business model is it under? It sounds like you guys are under an agency type of model.
Correct. So in the recruiting world, there are two types of agencies for the most part. One is a staffing model and the other is a recruiting model. So with virtual assistant staffing agencies, you might go to them, tell them, hey, you want to hire a VA. You pay usually about $3,000 to $4,000 a month. And then their job is to go out and get you a virtual assistant. Now, you're paying them $3,000 as a flat rate, regardless of who they get you. And so they're incentivized to go out and get you the cheapest dollar per hour employee, because the less expensive the VA is, the more money they get to pocket. When I first started hiring VAs 8-9 years ago, I went through an agency that was doing that. I was paying $3,000 a month, but then the VA was only getting $5 per hour. So I got the lowest, cheapest quality they could get, essentially. And so when we started Remote Leverage, we wanted to do it differently. So we opted to do the recruiting model. Now, the recruiting model is different in the sense that customers come to us, they tell us what they want. We go out, we get them 4 to 6 applicants to interview. And then if they decide to hire someone from that pool of applicants, then they just pay a percentage basically of the annual salary to us as a one-time recruiting fee. And then that's it. Then they pay their virtual assistant directly. They never have to pay us again. And people love that model because we get out of the picture. We're not like the middleman anymore, essentially. And then if they come back and they want a replacement, because sometimes that happens, right? They want replacements, whatever, we give them a 6-month replacement guarantee. So anytime they're not happy for whatever reason, we make sure that we replace people. But this makes it a win-win situation for everybody because the virtual assistant is the full salary. The client doesn't have to pay us ever again after the first payment. And then we get out of their way. So we don't have to bog ourselves down with management of their VA, because the way we might manage the VA might be different than the way they want to manage the VA. So we don't get the client to get annoyed with our processes, essentially.
Got it. Give the audience a little bit more about how you guys approach the recruiting process. Let's say if somebody like, hey, here's where I'm at, here's where I need to be. Tell us more of that process, and then how do you work on matching the clients to the right candidate?
Yeah, that's a great question. When you're hiring, especially if you're a smaller company, say you're under 10 people, one person can really make or break the company. If you hire right, they can really take you to new levels. Like I remember when we were at 50,000 a month, we had about 6 people in the company. And then that one hire, the marketing person, got us to grow from 50,000 a month to 450 and grow the team by a 10x size. So really every hire could make a big difference. And so when a client comes to us, the first step is we do a consultation to figure out what they're looking for at high level. They don't have to pay us anything, by the way, at that point. They just pay a 500 refundable deposit. They can get it back anytime. But anyway, if they decide to proceed, we have them meet with a hiring manager. The hiring manager, their job is to sit down with them and ask them very detailed questions to figure out exactly who the person is we should get them to interview. Usually that takes about 15 to 20 minutes. After that's all filled out, the next step is we book an interview with them to meet 4 to 6 applicants. And typically that's kind of when the recruiters basically jump in. So every day we get about 700 to 1,000 applicants that apply for jobs with us. And so their job is to vet for English skills. Like we want to make sure that the people they have interviewed speak very fluently, little to no accent, things of that nature. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we want to make sure that they're set up to work from home, because working remotely is different than in office. We want to make sure they have stable internet, stable computers, all of that sort of thing. And then we want to make sure that they have experience. So if somebody's applying to be an executive assistant, you don't want to hire someone that has no experience and just wants to be an executive assistant. You want someone that has many, many years of experience working at large companies or whatever. So that way, when you hire them, they just come in and they know what to do day one, essentially. You just have to train them on your business, but they already know what to do. So we really look for experience a lot. We gather voice recordings, resumes, vet people. Usually out of about 1,000 applicants, less than 0.5% end up meeting our clients. Like our success rate with virtual assistants is very, very low because we have very high quality standards. So what happens is we get the client to interview 4 to 6 applicants. And then if they like someone, usually what we recommend is go and do a second round of interviews with them, because the first round might only be 10 minutes, 15 minutes per applicant. The second round, you want to spend 30, 40, 50 minutes or whatever. And then at that point, if you want to make a job offer, you speak to the hiring manager and they help craft a job offer in terms of hourly rate, start date, payment methods, all that sort of stuff. Typically, most of the roles we help people hire for are between $6 to $10 per hour, 6 to 8 if they're entry level, and then usually about 9 to 10 if they're more advanced, more experienced type of virtual assistants. But then at that point, that's when we get paid. After the virtual assistant accepts the job, that's when we charge our one-time fee. And then the client then works with the VA directly. If they ever need a replacement, they come back to us, which happens sometimes. But then otherwise, we kind of back off and we just check in from time to time to see if they need help with anything.
That's amazing. For the audience who may be new to working with virtual assistant from Latin America, or even just new to working with virtual assistant overall, what are some tips and advice you can give them on like maybe culture, maybe just difference in working with virtual staff that can help set them up for success?
Yeah, 100%. So we have an onboarding guide. We have every client goes through an onboarding guide. I've made a lot of mistakes over the past 8-9 years, and those mistakes have cost me a lot of money. So we try to help clients, not do the same mistakes. A lot of it honestly has to do with, number one is we tell our clients, be clear on what the job is and have proper KPIs in terms of like what you expect the person to do on a day-to-day basis. Because if you don't give people metrics to follow or to meet, they're just not going to do as well. They're not going to push as hard. So number one is set up metrics. The second thing that I always tell people is I'm a big fan of monitoring people. I trust people, but I want to verify that they're actually working. And especially with the remote work, it's very effective in a lot of ways, but sometimes if you're not watching people closely, they might not be as productive as they should be. So we have everyone install screen recording software. So that way during work hours, you can check on their screen and see exactly what they're working on at any given time. That has changed my business completely since I implemented it like 6 years ago. So I always recommend that people do that. And then honestly, besides that is frequent feedback. If you're not happy with something or you want something done differently, have meetings with whoever you hire and coach them on how to properly do things. But at the same time, in my experience, if you are not happy with someone in the first week, you're probably not going to be happy with them 4 weeks in, 2 months in, 3 months in. So usually what I recommend to people is hire fast, because good talent gets hired very quickly. So if you're very slow in the hiring process, you're going to lose people. So hire fast, but at the same time, fire fast as well. Because if you're not happy with someone, the chance of them turning themselves around and actually becoming good is very low. So that's why we provide unlimited replacements for our clients during the first 6 months, because we're like, listen, you want to hire someone, if you're not happy, let us know. We will take care of it. We'll replace them for you. Don't waste your time. Don't waste your energy trying to fix somebody that's not a good fit. And honestly, I would say those are the major three things: metrics, time doctor, to track people's activity, and then hire and fire very quickly.
Amazing. Once someone has built a team, any advice on how they can retain team members and continue to help their team members to grow?
Great question. Interestingly, we have very low churn internally at Remote Leverage. Like at the company, very, very few people leave. I think this year out of 55 people, we've only had like 2 or 3 quit. I think the reason behind that is because we're very specific about what people need to do. And so they know coming in every day, this is my job, these are my tasks. And, we're very communicative with them. So if something needs to be improved or whatever, we let them know. And I think just that clarity really helps people understand what their job is. And because they understand their job and they feel productive, they feel useful, they feel like there's direction of what they're supposed to do, that helps them be happy with their jobs. Some of the jobs that we hire for, honestly, in my opinion, are very difficult. Sometimes they're very boring, and yet people stay on. They don't quit because they understand what the job is supposed to do for the company overall. So they feel very useful. Sometimes I'll say some of our clients, one of the mistakes that I see happen is they hire someone and they're not very clear on what the person is supposed to do. And so then they start tossing them different tasks because they're just not sure what to have them do. And I think that's a mistake because you don't have a system set up. They feel like the company is not stable. They feel like there's no path of growth in the future. So you want to think through all of these things as you're hiring someone. Besides that, treat people well, pay them on time. Like typically our payment due dates on the 1st or the 15th. We pay people early. A lot of times we pay them 3 days earlier than they're supposed to. I never ever have any late payments, so that always helps. If we ever have to let somebody go, we do it in a nice way. So that way there's no bad vibes out there of ex-employees hating you. So just treating people well and giving them guidance and having clear expectations really helps keep retention high, in my opinion.
That's awesome. I fully agree with all that. I think people really underestimate clarity for your staff, but also yourself in the growth journey. One thing that you touch on, and I would love to hear your input when you first start growing or if you work with solopreneur, is that for smaller companies, sometimes you don't have enough quantity of tasks for one employee to just consistently repeat that. And so then in smaller companies specifically, there's a lot of employees who need to take on multiple different tasks. Give us any tips that you may have on bridging that gap to actually have a team and grow enough to have a lot of that quantity for one person to really focus. Any tips on that process?
100%. So 2 answers to that. Number one is essentially whoever you hire at first, a lot of times they are going to wear multiple hats, and you need to make sure that they're smart enough to be able to handle multiple tasks. That's very, very normal. So part of the interview process, that's kind of a role we call a general virtual assistant, where essentially they will be wearing multiple hats. Now, you don't want them to do very different tasks, meaning I'm not going to have somebody who's a general virtual assistant come in to do marketing and sales. These are very different tasks. The other part to this is that when you're a smaller company, the reason you need to wear multiple hats is because you just don't have enough business coming in to keep somebody busy full time in one job. And the way you solve that is you just bring in more business. And the way you bring in more business is by freeing up your calendar as the owner so that you can focus on the higher dollar per hour things. So then, the company grows. And so as the company grows, you end up having less and less and less people doing multiple different tasks, and you'll have more people just doing one task at a time. And that's basically all they do because you have enough business to keep people busy. And so that's why it's very important you look at your calendar to figure out what are you wasting your time on that's not really producing income for the company, and then outsource those things as quickly as possible. Honestly, the way I look at it is if you think about it, let's say you hire someone for $10 per hour and they don't stay busy full time. Who cares? If they free up 2 or 3 hours of my day and my dollar per hour is $500, that's freeing up $1,500 a day. So to me, it's like, as long as they free up any amount of time out of my calendar, it's worth it almost every single time because it's way cheaper than hiring locally in the US. So it's like, it's so easy for the value to be there. So that's the way I look at it. As long as they free up some of your time, go spend your time on higher level producing activity. Even if they're not as busy at first, they will get busier as you do your job better and bring in more business to the company.
Amazing. For the audience who's listening who maybe have not hired virtual staff, tell us a little bit more about what they need to do to prep themselves. Let's say before they approach you, what is it that they should prep themselves for? Anything in terms of like actionable step that they can take to prep themselves before they approach a company like yours to hire their first staff.
Yeah, I would say, that's one of the things we help with on the consultation call is really just trying to understand and help them understand what truly are they looking to hire for and what is the actual bottleneck in the business. Because sometimes, like I said, they come in, they think it's one thing, but it turns out to be another thing completely different. So really, if you can figure that on your own, great. If you can't, our team can help you figure that out on a consultation call through the questionnaire that we ask essentially. The other thing I would say sometimes it's people that haven't hired as much in the past might have this idea that I can't outsource because nobody's going to do something as good as I am. And I can tell you from experience, that is not the case. There are many, many people out there that can do your job better than you can currently do it. If you hire someone more experienced, they can come in and day one, they can do a better job. Case in point, when I was doing marketing, the minute I left marketing, the business exploded because I was not as good of a marketer as I thought I am. So that's number one. But then the other part, even if you hire someone who's not as experienced, if they come in and they just focus on that one task and they do that all day long, they will get better way faster because you might have 100 different tasks to do and they only have one. So they will get better at it very, very quickly.
I concur 100%. As someone who's worked with virtual assistants, I think if you're feeling like that, you're not having the right person. And once you have the right person, you will be amazed.
Yeah.
That's just how good they can be at doing that task and way better than what you potentially can do.
100%.
Love that. I want everyone to switch to the mystery question. So this is a mystery question that was left behind by a previous guest. And your question is, what are the top 3 things you would do today if you were to start a new business?
Oof. That's hard. I mean, it depends on the business. Number one, I would try to figure out a problem that I can solve that can pay enough to be able to compete when it comes to advertising. If you solve a problem and that problem is not worth a lot of money to businesses, like let's say the problem is only worth $1,000 or $2,000, it's very hard to grow a business like that because you have to compete on the marketplace for ad space and you're competing against companies that have customers that are worth $6,000, $10,000, $30,000. So number one is I would focus on a problem that is big enough for me to be able to charge a good amount of money to solve it. The second thing I would do probably after I figure that out is I would want to make sure that whatever problem it is that I'm solving, that I am really, really good at it because people don't want to pay for low quality work. If I'm going to go out there and charge people money, I want to make sure I perform really well. I want to have good reviews. Like if you look up remote leverage right now, I don't think we have a single negative review from a client at all, 0. And we have hundreds of reviews. So it's really helpful because what we do, we're very good at. And I make sure always that whatever product we sell, we can stand by. So that's the second thing. And then the third thing is I would start to look to hire immediately since day one. The reason behind that is there's so much work to do. And if I'm going to get all this work done and then hire somebody, I might as well hire someone since day one so that we can build faster and move faster. Like it took me about 1.5 years to get remote leverage to $450,000 a month. If I was to start all over again, I'm pretty sure I could do it within 6 to 9 months and half the time because I've learned to hire people faster and hire better people. Even though I pay them more, they grow the company way faster.
Amazing. So look at the problem, start with what you're good at, and hire quickly.
100%.
Love those 3 things that you share. Thank you so much for being with us today, Abbas. You shared so much helpful tips to our audience. Please let the audience know how they can follow you, how they can follow your journey, how they can find out more about your company.
100%. I appreciate that. Well, if they go on our website, remoteleverage.com, they can see exactly what we do, how we do it. There are a lot of frequently asked questions on there. And then if you're interested in hiring someone potentially from Latin America, like I said, most roles are between $6 to $7 per hour. You don't have to pay until you meet them and hire somebody. So if you're interested in that, go on the website. You can book a call with our team, ask them any questions you want. And then we're also all over social media. I don't use social media that much personally, but I know we're all over there.
Speaking like a true owner with staff, I'm like, I don't know how it's happening on my social media. I know it's happening, but that's great. I love it.
The post occasionally, but that's all.
Thank you so much for being with us today. I will share all of that in the show notes so you can go find out more about Abbas. And until next time.
Thank you, Yang. Appreciate it.
Bye.